I'm really excited today to have Sarah Brooks with us for Talk About It Tuesday. For those of you who are new to the group, Talk About It Tuesday is when I bring in a professional in the field to talk about something. So that's what we do. I actually was connected to Sarah Brooks at a conference last year that I attended where Sharon Houston, who's a member of our group, was one of the speakers. And so she knows Sarah. And Sarah had this great presentation on paying for self-publishing. And I was like, this is so good. So I reached out to her. This is our first time connecting outside of email and DM. So I'm really excited about that. So yeah, Sarah, we're glad you're here. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Hi, thanks so much for having me. It's great to get to talk to you face to face via technology. My name is Sarah Brooks. I am a musician, I'm an author, I'm a coach. I do a little bit of everything. I just love all types of creativity in all its different forms. Mama four, stay way too busy and probably don't sleep nearly as much as I should. But I love creativity. I love writing. I love working with authors. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Well, we're so glad that you're here. The we have a lady in our group. Her name is Charlie Warren. I don't know if you've connected with her, but she's actually branching out from like book coaching to like creative coaching because she does
Yes.
all the things too. She's like an artist. She does paintings and like, yeah, so you guys would connect well, I think.
Yeah.
And I think she's got three. I think she's got three kids. So she's the busy one
It's
too.
a sanity saver. You need those creative outlets to have
Absolutely.
those moments.
Mine is grown, so I'm in a different season and I'm grateful for it because it's awesome to be able to not have to balance all the things. So it's a good thing. All right. So we're talking today about self-publishing specifically. Obviously, if you go with a traditional publisher, these costs aren't going to apply to you in the same way. So this is really for those who are looking to self-publish. Recently, I created, and it's available, I'll throw it in the links when we're done here, a book budget forecast to help you guys kind of navigate. It's based on a 60,000 word book, how much for editing, design, different things. But we're going to kind of talk through that. So, Sarah, what expenses do you think are important for people to be prepared for? I may need to add some to my budget list when we're done.
Sure. Okay. Absolutely. One of the things that's probably going to be your biggest cost, but I would consider the most important thing to pay for when you're self-publishing is editing.
Yeah.
And there are lots of different types of edits. You have a developmental edit, which is probably going to be your most expensive option.
Mm-hmm.
Development, just like the word developmental, they're going to help make sure that your book idea is fully developed. So if you're doing nonfiction, they're making sure that whatever theme you have carries throughout the entire book, that it all fits together, flows together. They're kind of looking at the story as a whole and making sure that it is put together in a way that is clear and coherent, that you're on target, on task. So that's developmental editing. But then you'll also have somebody who will do like a line edit. And line editing is looking at your sentences. Is there repetition? Is there word usage that's unclear? Like they're going to kind of look at your sentences and clean those up for you. And then you would also have like a copy edit or somebody who's going to look at your grammar, your verb tenses, kind of the
Yeah.
mechanics. It's not as subjective as like as the previous edits are. There's rules, like we all know.
Yeah.
Rules
So
for writing.
I like to refer to the line edit as the part that makes you a better writer.
Yes.
The
Yes.
copy editing is
Did
the
you click the
Chicago Manual of Style.
yes?
Like this is
Did you have a comma here where
yeah.
it's supposed to be a comma in this
There's a
list?
rule,
Whatever.
you broke
Mhm.
it. Here's how it works.
Yes.
The line editing is the part I kind of enjoy.
Yeah.
I think it's, doing the self-editing. I like to grow in the craft. Some of you actually may use like Grammarly or Hemingway. Um,
Pro writing
that's
aid,
that's gonna, oh yeah,
autocorrect.
Pro Writing Aid. Yep.
Mhm.
Those, and I've only used Hemingway and Grammarly myself. And that's more copy editing, sort of. There is some
They're
line
getting
editing.
better. They're getting
Yes,
better with the AI technology of
they
like
are.
saying, hey, you've used this same word several times,
Mhm.
maybe try a different word. So they're geting a little bit
They're
better.
also really good at applying rules in the wrong
Mm,
context. So you have to
that's
be
right.
careful with
Human
those.
eyes. Those type of softwares and programs are fantastic for like a first run, but they're
Exactly.
not a replacement for a human being, in my
Right.
opinion.
Now, I will say this because we're talking about creative ways to pay for stuff. The the copy editing, the rules part, the professional part,
Mhm.
to me, that is the non-negotiable in our writing. Before you
Right.
publish, that's the one you have to pay for. The
Mhm.
other ones, there are creative ways to
Yes.
do those.
Mhm.
I have done, I call it peer reviewing. Some people call it peer critiques. It's where
Right.
another writer who's also kind of at the same level you are, you swap
Mhm.
manuscripts or things like that. I know a lot of you are in critique groups, but those only let you put so many words out at a time, and it can take a really long time that way, but it is an option. You can not peer readers. Beta readers are
Mhm.
also a great way to get feedback on developmental editing type stuff.
Yes.
They're not necessarily writers, but they're in your ideal pool of readers. And so they're going to be like, I didn't understand this. Like, this didn't make sense. And that's developmental editing.
Yes, they'll pick
So,
up on what's not clear or what doesn't come through.
or
So yeah,
why did the character's
absolutely.
name change in chapter 7?
Mhm.
Those kinds
I
of things.
thought they were in Hawaii. Why are they in Kansas?
Why is
That
she
kind of
wearing a
thing.
winter jacket? Yeah.
Yes,
So those kinds of
absolutely.
things, there are ways to work through and around those. There is another Talk About It Tuesday we did a while ago. If you guys want to go into the guides and check it out with Carrie Turner, who's an editor, and we kind of talk through some of this at length. So if you want more information on that, go check that out. But editing is definitely a cost that we need to plan for 100%.
Absolutely. Because a lot of times you can be a fantastic writer, but you've probably read that thing 14 times. And so your brain just starts skimming over stuff and you know how the story's supposed to go. So you might not pick up on the fact that you left this word out here because your brain just fills it in for you.
Yeah.
So getting somebody else's eyes on it, super, super
And
helpful and will only make it better.
let's be honest, around round 8, you're like, I just
Yeah.
don't care
You
anymore.
just
Like,
start
I
like
don't care.
zoning out.
It's good enough. So,
Words, lots of words.
yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a point where we need someone else.
Yeah, so editing, that's going to be your biggest expense,
Yeah.
and it will vary what you will pay on a couple of different factors. How many words it is, because a
Mhm.
lot of editing, it's per word is
Yeah.
what editors will charge.
That's the
Um,
norm, I would
that's
say.
normal. Yeah. And then it can also vary a little bit depending on like your genre. If I did a children's picture book, my editing was a couple $100s. If you're writing an epic fantasy saga, you're going to be paying more than $250. You're looking at a couple $1,000s
Because
because
there's
there's
an
a
alternate
longer
world
one.
that they have to understand. Like, there's a lot.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
more complicated, it's more involved. So there is a range. And then there's also a price range depending on how experienced your editor is. If you've got somebody who used to work at one of the big 5 publishing houses, they're going to charge more because they've got more experience.
Exactly.
I like to recommend people ask for referrals. So if you're in a writers group like this one, ask who have you used and liked for editing? Because you can find some good editors who maybe do it on the side so they don't have to pay their mortgage with it. So their
Mhm.
prices might be a little bit more affordable,
I think
but
that's a
referrals
really
are
good
great.
point. There are a lot of platforms and companies like Fiverr and things like that. I don't recommend to clients going that direction
The,
because
the
you don't know what you're getting.
I will say the one exception to that is Readsy because their editors
Yes.
are vetted. They are
Yes.
more expensive, but you're paying for the fact that these are actual professionals. They have to jump through a lot of hoops.
That's a great
But
point. Thank
yeah,
you for
I
mentioning
totally
that.
agree with
Yeah.
you. Like Fiverr and Upwork, you don't know what you're getting on those places. So I'd be careful unless you personally know someone who's worked with
And
an
real
editor.
quick, I want to throw a disclaimer out there for all the things we're talking about. If someone cold DMs you, don't hire them, period. Like, the only people doing that are people who, I'm not going to say they're scammers. I'm not going to say they're going to take your money. Maybe they're authentic and legit, but that is not a relational way of connecting with someone. And most of those people, if you dialogue with them, don't even have a clue what your book is or what it's about. And they're just trying to help you market without actually taking any time to know who you are or whether or not you are their ideal client. Also an editor who's going to tell you, oh, it doesn't matter what genre you write, especially if you're
No,
doing
it does.
developmental, it
Yes.
100% matters
It
because
really does.
you don't want a generalist, especially at this price point. You want someone who knows what you write and knows it well. I would rather pick an editor who only knows 2 genres
Mhm.
and knows them well
Yeah, because
than,
especially if you're writing genre fiction, because there are certain tropes and there are certain things that are specific to that genre, and they need to know
and
is
that goes
fitting.
for editing, that goes for
Mhm.
marketing.
Mhm.
Because you market the books differently. It goes for cover design. There are certain things you need. If you're writing suspense mystery is different than a romance. Nonfiction is different than memoir. even though
Right.
they're both nonfiction, there's a difference. So
Yes.
like you really want to make sure that you're leaning in devotionals are different.
Mhm.
So make sure that you're asking questions, interview them. You're hiring someone to do a job for you. And I'm shocked at the number of people that don't interview the person first. They just
And get
like
a
the price and
sample.
jump in.
A lot of editors will let you do a sample edit where you hand them 2 or 3 pages and they'll give a sample edit and you can kind of see their style. So I would recommend, if they offer, do a
Yeah,
short sample edit and get a feel
that's a
for if
great
that
point.
would be a good person to
And
work
if
with.
it's not, it's okay to say no after the
Yeah,
sample edit. Like
absolutely.
you are not under obligation
You're dating,
to,
you're not marrying them. It's
yes.
important to date these people before you commit to this long-term relationship with them.
And circling back to what you started with, Sarah, too, I think that um, writers groups are great, especially smaller ones like this one.
Mhm.
There's some that have thousands of people in them and you don't know those people. Half of them are marketers themselves.
Right.
So like, in a group like this where I vet everybody very thoroughly, these are writers who are actually serious about their craft, ask, who have you used? And I know some of you have done that on the group. So that's a great question. This is a safe place to do that. And if you've used someone you've liked, feel free to share that or DM them privately. If you maybe had a negative experience, but you don't want to say anything bad about someone, you can always send DMs that way too. But we also have some of these people who are writers and also do these things in the group.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but the same thing, I'm not endorsing that. I'm saying vet them, because what works for me even may not be the right fit for you. So check it, do your homework.
Yeah. So
Okay.
get the editing. Whew,
That was a long
that's gonna
disclaimer,
be
but
your
um,
biggest chunk
yeah,
of money. The second thing that I would recommend that you invest in is your cover. We all know that cliche, don't judge a book by its cover. Everybody judges a book by its cover.
I love
And
this.
if your cover looks like you made it on Photoshop by yourself with no graphic design experience, it could be the best written book in the world. People will
Will
not
not
buy
buy
it.
it,
So save your
especially
money.
nowadays.
Yeah, you can make a homemade cover and it can look okay. And it can be fine, but you have so much more. This is not good English. You are more likely
It's not
to
an
have
editing conversation,
success
so you're okay.
with your book. I need an editor for my live words. You're more likely to be successful if your book looks professional. And
And
so pay to have a professional cover. Again, price range on that is huge, but I would say you're not going to spend 25. You're looking at more like 250 to 500
I have
if you
250 to
hire.
8 on my
Yeah,
research.
or
Yeah.
8. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's gonna be several $100s for you to get a professional cover. And a lot of times they will charge you for a print book, might be a little extra if you're doing an ebook version or if you need like an audiobook cover. So sometimes they'll have a
They're different.
package deal where you can get all 3 of those things. Um, Again, Readsy's a place you can do that. I know some authors have used like 99 Designs. The positive thing about something like that is you run competitions. And so you can get several graphic designers to kind of like enter your competition for the book
Oh,
cover. And then you can vote and choose which cover you like. So that kind of gives you some more options to choose from. And you kind of get a feel for what your cover would look like before you shell
I
out
haven't
all
heard
this.
of that one. So it's called 99 Designs.
99designs.com. They may have been bought by somebody else since the
Okay.
last time I looked on it. So, but if
It'll
you
redirect, I'm sure.
yes, it should redirect to it. But that is one that I have heard several authors use successfully,
Okay.
and they end up with professional looking results because these are professional designers, freelancers. Um, but yeah,
That
you
just
can get
sounds
a
fun.
feel. Mhm.
I like
And
the concept. It sounds fun.
that's not terribly expensive to do it that
Okay.
way. So
So one of the things I want to talk about really quick with cover, first of all, we did a talk about it Tuesday specifically on cover design with
perfect.
marketer Charlie Warren. So you can check that out in guides. And she had a lot to say about why it matters for marketing. So if you want to
Yes.
understand the impact, like you got to remember, especially if you're selling on Amazon, they're seeing a thumbnail. They're
Tiny.
not looking in a
Mhm.
Barnes and Noble. They're looking
Right.
on their phone. So
Mhm.
like tiny fonts, there's so many details that go into a cover that we just don't know. I know a lot of the trend right now is to make it in Canva.
Right.
Um, and that's an option, and they have some templates in there. There are like pre-made book covers you can buy, like that people sell where they design, here's 10 cover type design, and we'll drop your name and your,
Uh-huh.
your but you might be having the same cover as other
Somebody
people.
else.
So look into that, make sure like once they use it, it's not used again,
And
be
like you
careful.
were saying with editing, finding a designer in your genre is
Mhm.
also really helpful because just like there are certain tropes in the written word, there are certain tropes in covers. Like fantasy are going to look a certain way. Romance, sweet romance are going to look a certain way. Cozy mysteries are going to look a certain way. So you want to make sure that your cover matches your genre. Because when they're scrolling on Amazon, if you're looking at a cover and you think it's going to be like a sci-fi, but they read it and it's
It's a
actually like
memoir.
this, yeah, memoir. You're like, wait a second, these two things don't
She
match.
was
So
abducted
yeah.
by aliens? Wait, what?
Uh-huh. I
Um,
mean, that could happen in a romance, I suppose, but not quite
so
what you're
I want to
expecting.
speak to that really quick too. If you've been following me for any amount of time at all, you may have heard me say this, and I will continue to say it. Um, if you're writing a devotional, there is not a requirement to put butterflies, hearts, or flowers on the cover.
Yes.
If you're writing about Jesus, it does not have to have a
Yeah.
cross on the cover.
Yes.
It's okay to actually use imagery that's symbolic or, varying ways. And I say that from my background in communications. So when I actually worked for a large church for about 5 years as the director of communications. And I was constantly in battle with the graphic design team in our media department because all they cared about was what it looked like. And I'm like, but it's telling a message. The message matters. And they're like, but it's
Right.
so trendy and cool. And I'm like, but I don't know what it means. Like
Right.
we have to, so you need both. You need really artistic relevance in genre design, but you also want it to make sure you're communicating your message. You
Right.
also don't need to have literally every aspect of your novel portrayed on the
On the
cover of
cover.
your book. Like here's the road that they walk on, and here's the hill they're going to, and here's the house that they stop at for coffee. You don't need to put all that on the cover. So, it's just like your book. There's some editing that goes into the cover too.
Right. Absolutely.
So, okay. So along with design too, you mentioned cover, also your interior
Yes.
needs to be laid out. And
Right.
if you're doing ebook, that's a different type of format file too. So
Yes.
some of you may have the skill set to do that yourself. Some of you may not. If you don't, that's going to be a cost.
If you have a Mac computer, Macintosh, Vellum is a great software. I've used that. My dad's working on a devotional book and I've been doing the book formatting for him. And it's just like a software you can run through and it does the formatting for you. But that is only available on Apple. So that's a
Okay.
downside. But yeah, book formatting will definitely
And if you're
done.
using KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing, they do have templates for Word
Yes.
and other things that you can download. But if you're not, a lot of people use Word but don't know Word. So if you don't know how to do headers and footers and you don't know how to do section breaks and continuous page breaks and things like that, it may be tricky and you might still need some help fine tuning what you've put together.
Yes.
I know when I've done layout and design, I would rather start from scratch in a blank file than try to fix what someone else tried to do because it's a lot
Right.
more work.
So
So
maybe if you want to try to do it yourself, save a copy that's not edited,
yes, yes, that's
a
not
backup,
formatted because
just in case.
a designer will charge you more to fix your problems than
Yes.
they will to start from here's just a text document and I can do all the things fast from the beginning and have it right. So
Right.
be
Yes.
mindful of that cost wise. Okay. What else do we need to pay for when we're self-publishing or things that could be
So
costs?
if you're self-publishing and you're wanting to have your book more than just on Amazon. So if you have on Amazon, they can provide an ISBN number.
Mm.
I personally like having my own ISBNs. So you can buy an ISBN from Bowker. I never know if they pronounce it Boker or Bowker,
I think it's Bowker. That's how
Bowker.
I say
Yeah.
Bowker.
Okay, so you can buy an ISBN number from Bowker. You'll need a different one if it's paperback, if it's hardback. Each different version of it
Ebook.
needs its own unique ISBN number.
And it's much more cost effective to buy the 10 pack.
Yes,
If you're only writing one book and you only need 3, it's still more cost
yes,
effective to buy 10.
I
So,
was overly zealous and bought like 500. So
oh, good
apparently
for
I think
you.
I'm going to be like super productive over the next 40 years and I probably won't use them all up, but it was
Sarah,
cheap.
would you like to resell your ISBNs to the group members?
There you go. No, well, when I'd originally written my book, I thought, oh, I'll do a translation in Spanish and maybe a translation in French. So I'll need
Yeah.
all of these different things. And
Throw some
so,
Creole in there.
you know, so who knows? Who knows?
That's
But
fun. And actually,
they're not.
I'm
Go
really
ahead.
glad you brought up ISBN because I actually don't have that on my book budget. So I want to make sure I add that. What
Yeah.
I do have on the book budget, I learned from Sarah that I added was you want to plan 10% of your budget for
Yes.
unexpected,
Yes.
like an
Because that,
ISBN that Michaela forgot to tell you about.
yes. And even if you have if you're a type A and you've got like the spreadsheet, you've got all the stuff written down, you're like, I'm sure I've got everything, something will come up. A price will jump. I had an issue with my children's book that I paid to have it sent to an offset printer. So I had books printed instead of doing just print on demand. And the first batch of books that they sent me, they had an issue with their printing machine. It ran out of glue. And so you would open the book and my pages would just literally fall out of the book. And I'd already sent them to like 600 people and I had to resend books to everybody. And the printer made it right. They sent me books that didn't fall apart after that, but I still had to pay the cost of
Postage.
shipping
Yeah.
the replacement books to all these people. So stuff happens. It's always a good idea to have this contingency,
Yeah.
10%. If
That
you
was
don't
so
need it,
smart.
if you don't need it at the end, hooray, you've just got like a 10% profit that you can tuck into your back
Consider it
pocket.
your advance.
Yes, it's your royalty advance on your
Yes.
self-published book. But it is
I love
really
that.
wise because you don't want to get so far down this process and then find out, oh, wait, this is now more expensive than I thought it was going to be, or I forgot I needed to pay taxes and, or, whatever
Yeah.
unexpected thing might come up. Plan for the unexpected because it's going to
Yes.
happen.
So 10% I thought was a great number. It's what God asks us, so it seemed like a good fit for me. I
Uh-huh.
was like, I'm good with that. Um, Marketing, I talk about this in the budget worksheet, but marketing is really up to you.
Yes.
And you can do Amazon ads, social media ads, Google ads. There's a lot of places you can pay for advertising. So I don't put specific numbers in there on the budget form, but I do have lines for it. So you can kind of
Right.
plan on it if you want to.
And I would say if you are planning on running ads, plan for at least a $5 a day budget, especially for social media ads initially, because you're going to need to test and see what's going to work and what's not going to work. And $5 a day is generally like a safe, low
Entry,
place
yeah.
that you can enter in if you're doing social media advertising. The good thing about Amazon ads is their cost per click. And so you can also set a daily budget and they will only charge you if you get the clicks. Where I found with social media ads, like on Facebook and Instagram, they will spend your money. Like they don't
Yeah.
have any problem at all taking all of your money. With Amazon, I found they don't always take all of my daily budget. Most of the time,
Okay.
they don't use my whole daily budget.
And I
But
will say this as a precaution. You can hire someone to help you with this if you need
yes,
to. Coming from the communications background, it's not as straightforward and easy as you think it is because you don't want it to go to everybody on social media.
no, you don't.
You want it to go to your ideal readers. And the learning curve of that can be really
It
big.
can be expensive too
Which makes it
if you're
expensive.
not
Yeah.
sure what you're doing.
So
Yeah,
if you have, if you know somebody in marketing who can help you navigate that at least at the beginning, and then you can duplicate what they've done or something like
right,
that, like that's cool. But because you can save once you've set up ad campaigns, you can usually save them and rerun them later. So you
right.
could like switch out for the next book and not have to maybe pay it on the second book, but you paid it on the first book.
Right. And once you, especially with like Facebook ads, once you have like a custom audience that the algorithm has had enough time to figure out who your people are, subsequent campaigns are easier because you've done the hard work of
Mhm.
finding your people. Advertising is a little bit like childcare. They constantly grow and change, and you have like moments where they're doing really good, and then you have a regression, and then you've got to readjust and do something new, and then it's going to do it's
Yeah,
it's a gamble in some ways, so you have to be willing to know that there is no guaranteed return on your investment.
exactly.
So just know that going into it. They can be very successful, they can be very helpful, but it is
And the other part of that too is you can run the best ad campaign and hit only ideal readers, but if your cover and your book blurb are not good,
yes,
they will not convert to sales. So
exactly.
it's a package thing. You can't skip one. Like I'm not going to pay for my cover. I'm going to pay for advertising because then they're not
No,
going to buy the book. So like
no, yeah.
they go together.
And I will say also, good marketing will only help a bad book fail faster. So if
Oh,
you
that's good.
have a book that is poorly written, poorly edited, has an ugly cover, you could spend $10,000 to market that book and you might get people to buy it. But if they read the first chapter and there's 12 typos on the first page, you're going to get 1-star reviews and it's going to flop
And
faster.
once you start getting those one-star reviews, there's no undo for that, guys.
Yeah.
Like those are real. So,
Yeah.
and Amazon will not take them down because
No,
you don't want them there. Like that is not, no.
you can't say
No.
that hurt my feelings. Can you please
Okay,
take
so
that
that was
away?
a lot. We just dumb loaded on you guys. I'll throw the link in for the budget. It has all those things in there. Um, and then there's another line. And I added in coaching too, because I am a coach.
Yes.
So if I
And
I would
coaches are
not have
so
finished my first book
helpful.
without Sharon. I
No,
would.
I love Sharon. Sharon and I did peer coaching together when we were doing our coaching certification, and Sharon is phenomenal. Sharon is great.
Yeah.
I hired a coach when I worked on my book, I guess like
So
5 years ago, and it's just really helpful to have somebody that you can sit down with and brain dump and be like, I feel so stuck, and they can look at you and go, well, have you tried or have you thought about, or what are your thoughts on this? And
yeah.
it's just really helpful.
And I think too, some of them, a lot, like I know Sharon and I both offer this. You probably made you. There's sometimes it's like I'll do a one chapter critique,
Uh-huh.
and you can just take that feedback and apply it to the rest of your book. You know,
Right.
like so.
Yeah.
There's lower entry points for that too. Okay, so that's all the things you may want to consider. There's probably more. Feel free to add them in the comments later. But let's get to the heart of it. What are the creative ways to pay for these things, especially when we're just getting started or we have very limited income?
Right. So it can be expensive. It can be expensive, unfortunately. But the good news is you spend the money up front, you get to keep all the money on the back end. So we have to be kind of strategic in how we spend our money. There are some people who will do what I did. I did crowdfunding for my book. So my children's book is a book for kids with special needs. My youngest child was born with a rare genetic syndrome. And so as she was getting ready to go into school, I wanted a book or a resource that I could share with her class to kind of talk about some of her differences in a way that is understandable on a kid's level. And also as a mom, I just wanted my daughter to know that she was wonderful, like just the way she was, even though she's different from the other kids in her class. So that's kind of the heart behind my story. I tried going the traditional publishing route, but I was told because it was so niche of an audience and I didn't have a huge platform, they're like, we love your story, but children's books are expensive to produce.
They are.
And they're a small market. And so if you're talking about the special needs community. And so I have to get this book out, but we're a single income family. My husband's a pastor. I've got 4 kids. I don't have $5,000, $4,000 just in my bank account. So crowdfunding for me was the path that I went. And because my book was on a topic that there's a lot of passion behind, a lot of special needs parents really feel this need. The community on like disabilities and stuff on Kickstarter really kind of came around and supported the book and got it to over $5,000 in funding in less than a week. And so
Amazing.
that was huge for me. So Kickstarter is a crowdfunding platform that can be used. Indiegogo is another option that some people will use. Little bit of a difference between the two of those. Indiegogo, I'll start with Kickstarter. With Kickstarter, if you don't reach your set goal, you don't get your money. So that's kind of a downside in some ways, but it's also an impetus, to really
Try.
encourage your friends and family to invest. Because if you're $25 short, you don't get any of it. And all the money goes back to the people who pledged to donate. So it's not like Kickstarter keeps the money. They return the pledges to the people. Indiegogo doesn't have that stipulation, but the statistics show that campaigns that have that firm all or nothing actually do better. So in my opinion, it's scarier, but it probably would be more productive to do a campaign like that.
As someone who's contributed to Kickstarter, I am much more comfortable with that because of the fact that, how do I say this? If the person's not serious about it and they're not going to do the work on their end, then I'm not wasting an investment on something.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if this is what it's going to cost you to make your book and you don't do the work to raise that money, then
Right.
I'm not investing in something that you're not all in on.
Right.
Does that make sense? Like
It does.
it's
Yeah.
kind of a
Because
weird way of saying it, but
and it is work. Like it's not free money.
no.
I've spent so many hours working on my Kickstarter campaign because you've got to have covers. I did like a video. You have to have an idea of what like rewards you're offering at each
Mhm.
level. So you can't just post a picture of your book on Kickstarter and be like, please give me money, because
It's not GoFundMe.
it's not GoFundMe. Although you could do that.
You
There's
could.
creative ways to fund. You could do a GoFundMe. But with Kickstarter, it's an investment. So they want to know, what are they getting for their investment? So for my book, at the end of my book, I had different levels, but one of the levels that people could do was kind of like a thank you, and they could have their name or the
In the
name of
book.
their kid in the back of my book. So I had different levels.
I love that.
Yeah. So some people, I would do an autograph copy. My most popular level was one where you had buy one, get one, buy one, give one. So I would donate it to like a local school or a local charity, and then I would send a copy to them. Or if they said, hey, can I have the extra copy to give to my school? Absolutely. And I would send both
Okay.
books to them. So there's different options. The best thing and my biggest recommendation to anybody considering a Kickstarter campaign is be a backer long before you do your own campaign. So get on Kickstarter, look at the books, maybe in the same genre of what you're looking at doing, and look at the successful campaigns, the ones that met their funding, see what did they do, what did their campaigns look like, what were their different pledge levels, what were the rewards they were offering, and see what works. And then
That's so
also
smart.
back those as a backer and see what things are like on the back end. So they sent you out an email to give you an update, see what that looks like, see what it looks like when you receive the book that you pledged. So you kind of have some experience doing that before you launch your own campaign. And
That's
it
so
also,
smart.
it's research in a lot of
Yeah.
ways, but it's also being a good member of the community. So if you are a writer, I know I want to support other writers because I know firsthand how hard it is to get your book out into the world. So do that and spend a little bit of time and get a feel for what it looks like before you actually jump into crowdfunding on your own. And there are courses out there available. I bought one by Thomas Umstattd Jr. He had a crowdfunding course that was really, really helpful and offered a lot
Okay.
of like real practical spreadsheety type things to calculate budget, kind of like what you were talking about, as it plays into Kickstarter. Because Kickstarter will take some of your fees for credit card processing, and they will also charge a fee for using their platform. So whatever your budget is, I don't remember what the current rate is. If it's
You have
like
to add, but add that
5 to 8%, yeah. So they'll take that away from the money that you bring in.
to make sure you up the number a little bit there.
Yeah. So have that,
To
yeah,
cover
have a
that. Yeah.
little cushion, have your
Yes.
little cushion in there in your
I don't know,
budget.
maybe 10%.
Maybe 10%, somewhere around there.
So you mentioned the children's book, and it got me thinking. One of the things that I've talked with clients about recently too, I have a few that were working on children's books, and illustrations can be expensive and challenging. And
Yes.
so one of the things I had suggested was, do you have a local university with an art program or a high school program with a art? Because what a great opportunity for a student to build their resume, to build their
Absolutely.
experience,
Yeah.
and get some like real life experience with doing it. And then you also get the opportunity to invest in someone else.
Right. And
And
so
so
my
like,
my illustrator, this was the first book she had ever illustrated. She was a college student. She had
okay,
never done any type of pictures or anything before, but she was a granddaughter of a friend of mine from our church when we lived in Texas, and her grandmother had posted this calendar, this family calendar that this girl had drawn for her family. Like, that is just the cutest style. Like, I love her style. So I cold messaged her on Facebook and said, "Hey, I'm friends with your grandmother. Would you ever consider like illustrating a children's book?" And she's like, "I don't know what I'm doing." I said, "I don't know what I'm doing either. Let's not know what we're doing together." And so I was able to afford it a little easier because she was just starting out.
right. And that
And the
goes back to
price
what you
that
were
she quoted me was a price in my budget. So
and that goes back to what we were talking about earlier too, with like, someone who maybe doesn't have the experience yet is going to come in cheaper for editing. It's true for all aspects of your book.
right.
I actually am working on my writing projects right now. I'm working with a former colleague of mine who's just trying to build her resume. So she's doing my interior layouts for me,
Oh, nice.
at no charge. And I'm just going to give her billing in the front of the book on my copyright page. Not that she's wanting to go into this professionally, she just wants to be able to put it on her resume that
Right.
I've designed these books,
Yes.
that
And
are in print.
And since
So.
Sarah did my book, she's had several other books that she, as a result, had somebody who listened to a podcast that I was on and then looked at my book and then found the illustrator and then contacted her to do the illustrations for her book. So it has ended up, helping her
Yeah.
as she's grown in her career as an
So,
illustrator. So
so think creatively, think outside the box. I love the crowdfunding thing because I think a lot of people feel like it's begging for money, but when it's done well, it's not. You're
no,
giving
it's an
investors a
investment.
chance. Yes, you're giving
And the
people a
great thing
chance to
about
invest in a ministry for a lot of us.
Yeah, and for crowdfunding too, it builds community. So you have a group of people who are supporting. And a lot of times we're afraid to ask for help, but we're also robbing people of the opportunity to it feels good to help. So if you have a
Yes.
friend who's had this lifelong dream of publishing a book, I'm excited to help her. I don't feel like, oh gosh, please no. Like I want to help if I'm able to help. So don't feel like everybody's going to be like, oh, gross. There are always going to be trolls. There's always going to be
Of
people
course.
who are Debbie Downers, who are grouchy, but that's their problem. That's not your problem.
No.
Do it wisely, do it well. And invite people to partner with you. It's a partnership. And the people who supported it were excited for me when the book came out.
And
Because
I
they were
think too,
invested
like,
in it.
I know when I do like a GoFundMe or Kickstarter or something, I never feel bad giving $5.
No.
Whereas like if someone actually was begging or like reaching out to me and saying, hey, will you help pay for my book? I'm like, I don't have $100 to give you. Like that's my
Yeah,
first thought. But with something like that, any dollar amount, you can actually see the little thing move and like you're like, oh, I
right.
helped,
And for my
so
people, I gave
there's some
them
freedom in that.
books. So you
Yeah.
contributed basically the cost of a book. It was almost like a pre-order in some ways. They paid it up front, and then when the book was printed, I mailed it to them. And then the books fell apart and I mailed it to them again. So,
Yes. And
you
you
know,
built in the budget of the
exactly. I
10% of
had
this,
it
and it
built
was all
in.
good. Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I love that. Okay, so for you, crowdfunding was worth it.
For
Um,
me, it was,
yeah.
yes.
Are there any kind of projects that you think do better with it or that wouldn't maybe work quite as well, just in terms of genre or anything
So
like that?
it's variable. I would say sometimes nonfiction can be easier to do crowdfunding on, with the exception of memoir. I think it'd be really hard to do a
I
crowdfunding
think
on a
so too.
memoir unless you're like a celebrity, which if you're a celebrity, you're not going to need to do crowdfunding.
Correct.
I would say memoir, probably not so much. Things like poetry, probably not so much. Things that are around a certain issue or topic, those might do better. There are some people who do well with fiction. When I did the talk at the conference last year, I mentioned Brandon Sanderson. His Kickstarter campaign, he broke all sorts of millions and millions of dollars for his Kickstarter campaign, but he's also such a prolific writer and just has a huge fan base. So I would say just look around on Kickstarter. You can see which projects were funded. So check your genre and see if you can find
That's
successful
great.
campaigns in your genre. But I would say generally nonfiction around specific issues might be a little bit easier in terms of targeting people to send to your campaign. And I did run Facebook ads to my Kickstarter campaign when I was running it, just to try to get some extra eyes on it, because
Yeah.
Kickstarter will, with their own algorithm, kind of like you might like campaign type
Yeah.
things. But the more eyes and the more traffic you can get on your page kind of builds that. Um,
Every platform has an algorithm.
it does. It
It
does.
does.
It's
Yeah.
all the AI and all that stuff factored
Okay.
into it.
Well, I
So
really appreciate you sharing too that like don't think this is free money. It takes work. It
it
takes
does.
I love the research ideas because I think there's so much value in that. And even like searching by genre, I would not have thought to do that. So like I think that is super helpful information. You had mentioned a few other things in the conference outside of crowdfunding. I remember, and just the one that stuck with me, I think you said had like 4 or 5 of them, was have a garage sale.
Yeah.
I
It
was
can be
like, why do we not think like there's so many practical things that have a bake sale, do a cakewalk at a Christmas bazaar. I don't know, but there's so
yeah.
many things that we
Do
do for
Uber Eats.
everything else.
Yeah, spend your weekends and drop off McDonald's at people's doors.
Yeah.
It's the type of thing, it might take you a little bit longer to get there, but your book doesn't have an expiration date, most likely, unless you're just writing about a very specific, timely thing. Your book, your novel will still be exciting to read if it takes you 6 months to get it published or 4 years. Hopefully, for your sake, it doesn't take 4 years. But don't be afraid to take it slowly if you need to do that, because crowdfunding isn't for everybody. Everybody has different levels of comfort when it comes to like the financial side of things. So if you need to say like, for Christmas, I'd like a proofreader or
Yeah.
whatever it is,
Yes. I
I'd
actually
like
did that
money
with my
for my
coaching
cover.
services. I did like a give a writer a gift they'll use. Stop giving them the mug. Like give them
Yes.
give them coaching. Like,
Yes. Get
yes.
them a coaching session. Yeah, because that can
Um,
be very affordable
right.
to do something like
Yeah,
that.
so don't be afraid. I know it's hard because we tend to not, especially when we're publishing the first time, we're still in that place of extreme insecurity and
Right.
like, I don't know what I'm doing. What if it's not good? All of those doubts and fears are still really prevalent. Not that they go away, we just learn to manage them better.
Right.
But I think, we don't, we're afraid to ask family for help or like, hey, for Christmas this year, could you get me a proofreader? Like, why not ask that question instead of a new pair of shoes or, whatever? Like, why not lean into the thing that's important? And, just like everything else in life, we prioritize our money based on need
Mhm.
and passion and desire. Like, obviously wanting a place to live is at the top of that list. So mortgage comes first and
Right.
like we go from
Right.
there. So I even heard somebody say one time, like, I can't remember who it was. I'm trying to remember. They had gone and got like a DoorDash. They signed up
Yeah.
for DoorDash and
Mhm.
all their DoorDash money went to their book.
Right.
Like that's what it was for. And they could control the hours if they worked 1 day a week or 5 days. Like they had complete control over that, but it gave them a way to not feel like they were taking from their family,
Right.
but
Yes.
also to like, still have that money. Yeah. So be creative. Would love to hear your creative ideas. If you have other thoughts in the comments, share those. And Sarah's in our group, so she'll check in on those as well if you want to connect with
Yeah,
her.
sorry
She's
they're not live to answer them live, but I
I
will go
know.
back and check if you have any specific questions. I'll be
She's in
happy
the
to
group,
answer
so you
those
can
for you.
tag her if you want.
Yes.
Um, and we're so excited. Thank you so much for being on with us today. And yeah,
Can
just
I
pray.
do one
Yeah,
quick caveat?
absolutely.
This is my own personal soapbox. Please, 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 please be very, very careful of these companies that say, give us this money and we'll publish your book. So like be careful because it shouldn't cost you $10,000 to publish a book.
No.
And there are
So
predatory places out there that'll say, we'll do it all for you. Don't do that. Please don't do that because they will take your money.
and
And
I
that
will
would break
let
my
me
heart.
speak to that really quick because I did hybrid publishing on my first book. But it was actual hybrid publishing. It was with
Right.
a publishing house. Um, but I'd seen all the warnings, I'd heard all the things, and I did my research and I knew exactly what I was getting. I know that those companies don't do marketing well. So I
Right.
did not buy a marketing package with them because like I knew. So basically what I did for me, it was one-stop shopping. I didn't do editing with them,
Uh-huh.
because I've heard a lot of criticism about that too. So basically they did my interior, my cover, and then all my file formats.
Uh-huh.
And I wanted one-stop shopping. I was working full-time outside the home and it was a lot. And I just needed to say, okay, here's this much money. And this
Right.
is, now moving forward, I'm not doing it that way because this is a different season, a different project.
Right.
It was the right thing for me at the right time. But if you
Yes.
have any questions about that, I've done it. I can tell you the questions to ask. I can help you figure out. Um, the company I used was with Thomas Nelson Zondervan. So
Right.
like, but if you go online, there's a lot of negative reviews of them. And it's because people didn't ask the questions. It's because people didn't
Right.
know what they were signing up for and they thought they were getting something else than what they really got. And there is a contract and you read it and it's, so there are seasons for that, but absolutely
You will always
do.
either pay in time or in money. So
Yes.
if you have little time but a lot of money and you want to do that, you're totally free to do that. I would just be careful for some because you can do it for cheaper, but it
Yeah.
will take more. It will
And I'll
take
be
more
honest,
work.
I
Yeah.
will not make back the money I spent doing that.
Yeah.
I won't. In all
Yeah.
reality, I won't. And I prayed about this. This was my personal decision, so
Yeah.
it's my story. But I felt as though it was an investment in ministry.
There you go.
God had put it on my heart. If you gave money to a missionary, you're not going to expect to get that money back.
Right.
So this is an investment you're putting into a ministry that I'm calling you into. And I've never done this is how much I spent, this is how much I've earned. I've never done it
Right.
because that's not what I was doing. So,
Right. But
and,
you
and
went into that with eyes open and you knew that's
yes.
what you wanted to do. So I think that's fantastic.
And
Yeah.
this is one of the things I love about coaching too, because when you go through a lot of programs, there's a lot of writing programs and author programs, they'll tell you this is the way you do this.
Mm-hmm.
And coaching never tells you what to do. Real coaching doesn't tell you how to do something. They guide you through your journey.
Right.
And what, Kickstarter was perfect for Sarah. If we're talking with you and it's not perfect for you, we're going to help you figure that
Totally
out.
fine. Right.
Like we're not ever going to tell you do it this way because real coaches help you find out you're the expert on you. We're going to help you figure out what's best for your story, literally. So yeah. So be mindful of that. We're both here. If you need to talk to somebody, you're welcome to do that. And thank you for that because the buyer beware.
Yeah.
And
There's
that goes
just
back to the
predatory
editors,
people.
all of
Yeah.
the things.
There's very legitimate hybrid options that are fantastic, but then there are also very predatory people that they don't care about your book, they care about your money. So just be very
Absolutely.
careful. Be very
And that
careful.
goes for the editors, the
Yes.
marketers, the cover
Everybody.
designer, all those things we've talked about.
Yes. Be careful.
And this is why it matters. This will be my caveat. Amazon publishes 4,000 titles a day. It's a ripe market for predators. There's a lot of people who just want their book in print and they'll do whatever it takes. And so 4,000 books a day is a massive amount. And it's why all the things we're talking about matter, because if you don't do them to the highest quality, you're going to get lost in the 4,000 a day. So we want to help you be successful. So be mindful of that. It's sadly, and even in the Christian groups, guys, I'm in several Christian writers groups on Facebook. They're in there too. So don't just assume because the title says Christian that everyone in there has integrity. So be careful. Okay. We love you guys. We're excited about your projects. Can't wait to hear your questions. And we'll talk again next month for Talk About It Tuesday.